Okay, I'm going to
I
start
want to
then.
get this done.
Mm-hmm.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's forget it.
This guy?
Oh my God.
This guy again? Why?
Coming to you live from deep within a windy and rainy and also sometimes sunnyo. The hell? Radioactive. Meme land. It's like I said the EO before.
Sunnyoactive. It's Sunnyoactive.
Yes, the Sunnyoactive meme land. We are the survivors of alt-right apocalypse. I will never be able to say that word right. The few, the brave, the bitchy. You try it. Kekpocalypse.
Kekpocalypse?
Yeah, something like that. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the lobster hordes with Fundzerker. We don't know. Really? I think it's either Fundzerker 114 or I'm actually putting my vote in for 116/B/2.
I don't know. For me, it feels like 324,106.
Not over. Well, I guess that is over 9,000. Okay, so this one is titled Taking On Knowing Betters, Taking on the Red Pill, Part 2. Although I originally called it 2014 is calling it once it's ignorance of the past 5 years back. But yeah, we're doing this guy again. Oh,
yeah.
Although look at the bar. Somehow we've bamfed into the future where we only have like 3 minutes left.
Well, it's a little bit misleading. I wanted to jump ahead to another comment that we should probably respond to because I have a fefeeling we won't get to it. But then we can go back to where we left off, which I have marked off.
Oh, God. Why would we want to do that? Why?
Because we're trying to raise money here. So
yes,
help us achieve our goal, and then we'll stop putting you through this. How about that?
How about that? All right. So if you want to help us make sure that the ICMI 2019, the International Conference on Men's Issues 2019 is a smashing success, unlike this intro, please go to feedthebadger.com and put some money in the hat. We have a bunch of lovely sponsorship options. In fact, I would really love it if just one of you right now went there and put just $5 in to get this party started. And if you do, I will read whatever comment you make through Feed the Badger online, and I will thank you very profusely because every little bit helps.
Yes,
$5, $50, $500, whatever. Every
and
bit
also
helps.
$5 towards Feed the Badger is worth more to us than $5 toward a super chat. Just to remind everybody that YouTube takes 30% of every super chat, and pretty much every penny, other than a nominal, very, very small processing fee of what you donate through feedthebadger.com, is actually going to go to this fundraiser. So,
yeah,
and also
so
really
if
quick,
if you don't want Susie censorship to profit unduly from your assistance of our endeavor, go to feedthebadger.com.
Yeah. Also, YouTube, if it doesn't like your super chat, it'll take the whole thing. So there's also that.
True.
And you can also include a message with your donation to Feed the Badger, which Alison will read on the air.
I will indeed. So
Yep.
please go to feedthebadger.com and help us out. Well, you know, I don't know if I call it help so much as let's make this happen, because this is going to
Mhm.
be a cool event. It's going to show everybody what this community is capable of, and the, I think that's going to be great. I mean, to
Mhm.
be able to show the business community that we can pull together something like this is I think it's going to be a shot in the arm for recognizing men's issues, because a lot of the resistance to recognizing men's issues is because we basically use female exclusive victimhood as a way of motivating, you know, ka-ching. It drives a lot of money. Although, as we know, as we have found out from Anita Sarkeesian, potentially, there is an upper limit to female victimhood grifting without any appreciable, like, thing that she's produced. I mean, she hasn't really produced what she said she would, nor does she produce events, you know? So there's an upper limit. You actually got to give back at some point, and that's what we're about.
Perhaps one of the most appalling things about, because she actually was hosted in my city here, to do a speech through Edmonton Public Library. The Edmonton Public Library system, they sponsored a speaking event at one of the premier hotels in Edmonton, the Chateau Lacombe. It's always been one of the most esteemed luxury hotels in Edmonton. And she was invited to speak, and she started her speech essentially complaining that, well, nobody ever wants to hear me speak about feminism anymore, or my belief system, or video games, or the culture. They just want to hear about the threats. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's your entire career.
Your entire career is playing the damsel.
Yeah.
And you know, patrolling your turf and saying, well, you know, you guys, you're illegitimately playing the damsel to drive bucks. I'm legitimately paying the damsel to drive dollars. And you know what? Putting yourself in harm's way for the benefit of a community is different than playing the damsel. So I'm
True.
just going to put that out there.
Yeah,
That's
and I'm
the
also
fundamental
gonna
difference there.
I'm also gonna put it out there that I would never I wouldn't ever make a career on talking about, you know, harassment and how much of it I get and all of that, and then complain about that, you know, the fact that nobody wants to hear me talk about anything else. That's really what I mean. She really made her bed, and now she's being forced to lie in it. If she's really upset about the fact that people don't want to hear about her views on various political topics, they just want to hear her talk about how she was harassed and threatened and all of that. That's really nobody's fault but her own. So
Well, I'm just the main point for bringing her up isn't to really criticize her business model, because hey, she has managed to, well, I have to actually rescind my original admiration of her as being, you know, a cutthroat businesswoman who knew what she was doing. Because apparently there is a limit to promises and not delivering.
Yeah, at least Belle Delphine delivers her bathwater.
Yeah, I mean, I saluted Anita. I think that she's not ethical, but I salute her savagery when
her
it comes to
acumen.
money. Her acumen and her savagery when it comes to money. But now I have to say, well, maybe there's a limit to how much how much blood you can get from the stone of female victimhood. I don't know if that's the right. Maybe she has there's no more juice left for the squeeze when it comes to female victimhood. Something like that. I don't know. Help me out here, Karen. What am I saying?
Well,
I don't even know.
Yeah, she's squeezed all the juice she can out of it, and now it's just a husk. Now it's just a rind with some pulp.
Yeah, so, you know, there you go. So maybe there is something to having an actual legitimate business model where you deliver on what you say you're going to do. You put an actual budget out that people can look at and determine for themselves if it's reasonable. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And doing actual events where people can actually come and see you. Not requesting speaker fees for somebody else's organizational efforts, but actually making the effort of organizing events, etc. So maybe there's a business, there's something to be said for that. So anyway, if you want to help us out with our latest organizational effort, our latest event effort, which is going to be the biggest one ever. I mean, we've organized events in Amsterdam, Manchester, London. We've organized events in Gold Coast, Australia, Sydney, and the other part, Melbourne. Sorry, Melbourne. And we've also organized events in Victoria, and we didn't organize the event in Vancouver, but we did get to it. And then, of course, the benighted event in not Chicago, in Calgary. Geez, I hope that's not a Freudian slip there. Yeah, my pessimism is showing. I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, please do. Let's start the video because
Yeah.
you know, like I only got so much time for this trilby wearing asshole Davis Arini clone who apparently thinks Davis Arini is an MRA.
Yeah, really.
What?
Yeah, that he's
he's
parodying
literally
him.
he's parodying Davis Arini. He's wearing the hat. He's wearing the sort of the vest. He's got the skull in the background. He's sipping from a glass of whiskey every now and then, and he's yeah. So and it's like Davis Arini. He's been to one men's rights event. He came to the Kennesaw State University Men in Peril conference put on by Sage Gerard and KSU Men. But I think he only came there because he was at the time making the producing, you know, doing the filming for the Sarkeesian Effect, him and Jordan Owen, right?
Memorizing those keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
God, you're gonna run that.
Oh yeah,
I think it's into the ground now.
But he essentially, like, he's gone on the record saying he thinks that MRAs are no different than feminists, that we're all a bunch of socialists, that we all turn to the state for solutions to our problems, and that he thinks we're a bunch of pussies, a bunch of beta males, you know, and our ugly female hangers on or whatever, right? And so I mean, like, he's definitely not an MRA. He thinks that real men should be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome to whatever the situation is, however oppressive it gets, you know, no matter what the legal climate is, right? Real men should be able to, like, be impervious to that. And so, like, he's definitely not an MRA. He's like, Roosh is more of an MRA than Davis Arini is.
Okay, can I say something? I think that this individual is using the term MRA in the way that it was originally coined to simply mean everybody who I dislike. Of course, they use the word Nazi now for that.
Yeah,
but you know, it's like you do something they don't want you to do, and they call you a men's rights activist. And then some of us were like, you know what? We're not playing that game anymore. We are one. Goodbye. And Bob's your uncle. But it really only ever meant annoying these sort of authoritarian people who are obsessed with female victimhood and obsessed with men not being victims of stuff. As you can see, like, throughout, and I said that this guy avoids the conclusion that men are victims, and like, if he comes to that conclusion, his penis will pop off, just gone, right? And just fall down his trouser legs. Very humiliating, I'm sure, if it happens in public. I mean, God forbid he have like a men's rights epiphany in public, because it'll just roll out his trouser into the street. But regardless, that's why that's the sense I get off of him. And you see that, like, anybody who's watching this can see he's like a dog chewing a toffee whenever he's dealing with, just say it, men are vulnerable in a way women aren't to this issue. It's a men's issue. He can't do it. He always has to go back to, but women have it worse, because it is incompatible with his sense of self as a man to have an issue or have a vulnerability that's greater than women's vulnerabilities. It's just, and so he can't do it. So the moment he gets close to it, it's like a magnetic repulsion, and he starts to vibrate, and then he starts to ejaculate all this bullshit to say, oh, no, this isn't right. This isn't right. But you see how compulsive it is.
Men commit suicide more, but women attempt it more, and it's just like, yeah, okay.
Not anymore, really, but
like we've all heard that. The only statistics I have ever seen, right? Because usually they say women attempt it much more often, right? The only statistics I've ever seen put the numbers of the people who are still alive to take the survey, right? Lumping in suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, which is making a plan, suicide attempts, and self-harm, right? 5 women for every 4 men. Of those still alive to tell the tale.
Yep. And also, if you put in completed suicides in with attempts, you get more male attempts than you do female.
Well, because what is a completed suicide? It's a successful attempt.
Yeah, but they just exclude that, and then they get the erroneous statistic that women attempt less often. Although that's changing since the American Psychological Association released its guidelines on how to help women and girls. And the suicide rate for women and girls has started to skyrocket the same year it was published. Who knew? You know?
Who knew that telling women and girls that they have no control over their lives and that the entire culture wants to oppress them might drive them to suicide?
Or leave out any kind of coping strategies, like having something to live for, or develop a skill to develop, an external standard to uphold, stripping women of that.
Skin even,
Yeah.
like
all of that. Strip women of any kind of external standard to obtain, because any kind of any external standard,
any
expectation that isn't just blanket respect for women is, of course, oppression of women. And yet external standards are a part of developing positive mental health, because you have a measuring stick that allows you to see progress towards something. So you can say, hey, my actions have a positive effect on my life and the life of others. Wow, isn't that cool? I feel good about myself. Well, that's not for girls, according to the APA, the American Psychological Association. It just smacks that right out of the girls' hands. No, that's not for you. You have to believe you're a victim of everything. So guys like this don't have to be afraid of their penises popping off. All right, let's go.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, wait, there are some people who donated, though. Sorry. Jamie donated $69.99.
Why not $69.69?
Oh, damn. All right. Maybe next time. And okay, I'm not even gonna read that. The Cavanon, something or other, donated $5. Thank you for getting this started. And Silver donates also $5. I'm not gonna read out the entirety of your email or name because I don't want to inadvertently dox anyone. But there you go. Thank you to you guys for going there and actually putting some money in the hat. And please do, if you're listening to this, go to feedthebadger.com. There are some lovely sponsorship options. Choose one. Help us out. Okay, let's go.
All right, so we are officially starting the video now, 22 minutes in. I want to jump up to the end because I don't think we'd get to this on a live show. And so the guy at Knowing Better, after talking at length about men's issues and trying to debunk all of them, I suppose, or at least just make them engage in whataboutism. He talks a little bit about the other aspects of the manosphere, and I just want to show this one clip because I think this is important to let you know that he is a piece of shit. So
there are other factions, some of which are even creepier. Not all MRAs like them being around, but when one of the leaders of the men's rights movement says stuff like this,
if men made the rules to benefit men at the expense of women, here's some of the way the world would look like. We would make rules that every woman would be sexual with us whenever we would like. And that the women who are very young, maybe 13 or 14, would be very interested in us.
It's kind
oh my God. Okay.
God, Warren. Jesus fucking Christ.
But okay, here's the thing, because that was part of a longer clip, right? And in the longer clip, he's talking about the patriarchy of feminist imagining, right?
All right, so he's making a conjecture that
he talks at length about how he looks at history as being a cooperative endeavor between men and women, where both had primarily obligations to each other. Nobody was particularly concerned with rights, because that's not what you're concerned with when you're in a place where place of scarcity and danger and all of that, right? Okay, and so men and women took on a division of labor that was efficient, that helped them survive, that men risked their lives protecting their families, and in war, women risked their lives in childbirth, that these were obligations that men and women had towards each other, all of that stuff, right? And then feminists came along and only looked at one side of things, and they portrayed men in this particular way where if what feminists say is correct about men and about the system we live in, that it was created by and for the benefit of men at the expense of women, right? What would it actually look like? What would it actually look like if we were to take feminists at their word? Right? Well, women would have sex with any man anytime he wanted, and girls as young as 12, 13, 14 would be very interested in us. Well, now that I think about it, right? How is that different from the gender switched version of what we have today? Right? We have women who think that a man rejecting them sexually is, like, this is like unconscionable, unheard of. It's like it's a form of domestic violence. And we have women, female teachers, having sex with 13 and 14-year-old boys, and how do we deal with that? We just play that frickin' Van Halen song "Hot for Teacher" and shrug it off.
That's actually, the reality is that we don't really care that much if women are having sex with 13 or 14-year-old boys.
We don't.
In fact, there's a huge epidemic of it in juvenile detention facilities with boys who are literally in a cage and can't say no. And we just are like, yeah, that's, that's okay. This is something that we can live with. We're like the dog in that commercial or that cartoon with the fire everywhere. Yeah, this is fine. That's okay. Yeah, we're not going to make the connection between those boys growing up and sort of raping women themselves. No, well, at least a minority of them, apologies, but quite a substantial minority, I would imagine, since they are boys with the least amount of social support or any kind of resources. So, but let's not make that connection. It's okay. But just have at, ladies. Have your pick of the 12, 13, 14-year-old boys. And we're like, yeah, that's okay. We're happy with that. And I can see what you're saying about Warren Farrell making this into like, well, if men were like women, or if men were like feminists said, and then patriarchy would look like this. Yeah. If it's to argue the counterpoint, what was bothering me was that I hope he's not arguing that if men's desires were left unfettered, that's what it would look like.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because that would be very misandrist.
Well, another thing I'd add is that I know that he was trying to make it sound really absurd, but I think that there is almost no scenario in which that could ever actually happen, because men would not do that to women.
No, and it's essentially, like, there are men who will do those things to women, right? But men generally don't stand for that. And I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back 4,000 plus years, yet again, to the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? Which starts off with Gilgamesh being the epitome of what feminists believe men are. He checks all of the boxes on the conformity to masculine norms inventory, right? And as far as feminists are concerned, that's the end of the story. But that's just the introduction into the story. And the rest of the story is him becoming a man, like a real man, a good man, a man who can gain the admiration and respect of other men. Right? Whereas before, all he had was, his superpowers and the fear that those engendered.
Isn't it interesting? I want to make a couple points here. Yeah, Gilgamesh is about becoming, and they look at, like, a lot of cases feminists call toxic masculinity the male character prior to his development into mature masculinity. And it's like, well, nobody wants. I mean, there's so many stories about a male character developing into a mature, responsible adult because nobody likes him in his initial state. They want to see him develop from a callous, selfish, brutal person or brutal man into somebody who takes responsibility for the people around him and for abstract concepts like justice. You know, that's why you see so many of those stories, like Spider-Man. That's so much of the superhero mythos.
Yeah, no, and like all of this goes all the way back, right, to the very first story that was ever written down that we've ever discovered, right? That what did Gilgamesh do, right? He, okay, so he went on a quest against everybody's, during his, phase where he was trying to prove himself to be something other than an effete, debauched king by right, that hadn't earned it, right? So he goes on this quest, right, to the cut down the sacred cedar or whatever it is in this cedar forest, and kill this god or demigod that's guarding it, right? And he experiences fear and terror, and he and his friend Enkidu convince each other to take courage, take heart. We need to get through this. We need to do this. That act of arrogance, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut down the tallest cedar in this forest, kill this demigod, right? Just to show my prowess, just to prove to everybody what a man I am. Since I've been like essentially proving to everybody what a man I am because I lie around and eat grapes that are hand fed to me by concubines, and I fuck the newlywed brides of every man in my kingdom and put every man in my kingdom to work in service of my glory, and I haven't really done anything to earn it. So he has this immature idea of how to earn glory. And of course, because of what he did, it brings down the wrath of the gods. It's like, why would you do this? You had no reason to do this. The cedar forest and this demigod who guards it didn't do you any harm, right? Like, you just wanted this tree to prove how masculine you were, right? It's an empty trophy, right? And so they send down this bull that starts killing his people, and then he and his friend Enkidu have to go and kill the bull, and Enkidu ends up dying. And what do you see? You see Gilgamesh just absolutely devastated. He's weeping rivers of tears. It's just like his friend is gone, right? This person, right? And he learns that all of the lessons of responsible manhood, right? In that moment, right? In the moment of killing the bull and losing his friend, the courage and responsibility to protect his people, and the responsibility to be a kind and generous leader, and his loyalty to his friend, and all of these things that we want to see in the men around us, right? The ability to grieve, the ability to express emotions other than anger or lust, right? All of that, right? We see that through the progression of this king through this epic, and I'm thinking to myself, like, the first chapter is where the feminist story of Gilgamesh ends.
Actually, consider this, Karen. They are co-opting an ancient and very evocative narrative in order to propel their own movement into power. So
But they're
they're
not.
actually no, they say that they can take a man steeped in toxic masculinity and they alone can take Gilgamesh and turn him into a proper king. That's what they're saying. They're co-opting the narrative and putting themselves as the ones who can make Gilgamesh whole. And they do. What's really ironic is that all this is a reiteration of an ancient, the ancient hero's journey, and it's always been. We've always wanted men like the man that Gilgamesh matured into. That's what people want to see. They don't want to see a braggart, a selfish braggart who does things that with no sense of consequence to others, or engages in any kind of sexual violence. They don't want to see that, and that we've never wanted to see that. We've never wanted to see toxic masculinity. We've always wanted toxic masculinity. Isn't really toxic masculinity. It's when an individual male brain hasn't been subject to the maturing hormones that turn him into a man. So it's the intersection between that sort of childish sociopathy and a more mature risk taking, and then you're supposed and men in that sort of hero's journey, they go from that childish self-interested sociopathy into wanting to use the risk taking for the benefit of the community. And this is like you said, this is the oldest story in existence. And what feminists are saying is that without us, men stay or males stay in that childish sociopathy. They need feminism to, I don't know, saturate their brains with maturing hormones like testosterone so they start to take responsibility for their social group. No. First of all, you're co-opting an ancient narrative, so you're not anything new, friendo. And second of all, you don't do that.
No.
You just leave men in a state of perpetual social anxiety. Yeah. You don't give them any clear, like the Ballad of Gilgamesh is inspiring, and it's clear. It's clear what needs to happen. And at the end, Gilgamesh is applauded for his improvement. He's given
redemption.
For his redemption. You don't give any of that. You just keep them in a state of perpetual uncertainty and fear, as if, saying to men, you are a burden on society because of your toxic masculinity, is about the best way you could, best method you could create to make them compulsively do whatever you want.
Yeah, and then when they become Gilgamesh, then the feminists tell them, well, don't expect praise because you don't deserve a cookie for doing the bare minimum of a decent human being.
And also they say that you aren't a decent human being because you stole all of that, all of the recognition of your achievement from women, even though women aren't expected to go through the same process.
Oh my God.
I know. It's like men are expected to go through this process of maturation and putting themselves to the service of society and women and women and women and women. And then at the end of that, people are like, wow, you've become such a mature, responsible adult or man who has so many achievements related to becoming mature and responsible. And then the feminists swoop in and say, hey,
he stole that from women.
It's a result of his maturation as a human being. Women are never going to get that until they are expected to take responsibility for men in society. That's it. They're never going to get that process of maturation. They're never going to get a hero's story until they are expected to be heroes. And guess what? The word hero means. It means servant. So there you go. And I also want to point out that if indeed Warren Farrell believes that that's what men would do if they were given full control over society, I think that he's a misandrist. And I'm surprised that this man didn't realize that and realize that maybe this is coming from Warren Farrell's feminism rather than from his men's rights activism, because it's right in line with this idea of toxic masculinity, this idea that were women not to intervene, men would be these horrible brutes, oversexed brutes. And did this completely not occur to him that this is exactly what he says? That as a feminist, if women do not interfere or do not have control, if feminists do not have control over men, they would want to have sex with 12-year-old, 14-year-old, girls, because feminists think men are that shit. Yeah.
No, he puts up a graphic at the end of that clip. It's not pedophilia, it's called hebophilia or whatever, right? And That is actually true. And here's the thing, right? This is one of those murky freaking things that, you know, like there was a documentary. I was invited to screen it and give a review, and I gave a brief review on one of my videos like years ago, called Are All Men Pedophiles? Right? And it wasn't really talking so much about pedophilia. It talked about pedophilia as a disorder, right? But it talked about attraction to teenagers, right? Adults being attracted to teenagers. And there's a woman on the actual movie poster for this, right? I shouldn't say woman, but the caption, she's standing there, you know, dressed very, very nicely and, you know, very well made up. And with the caption, "Do you find me attractive?" And one of the people who interviewed the maker of this, I interviewed him again. God, I forget his name, but on my channel just not too long ago. But he was asked how old is the girl on the poster, and he says 14. And the guy was like, "Holy shit!" The interviewer was like, "Holy shit," because I thought she was hot. And you see this in modeling agencies. If you come in at age 16, fresh off the street, most modeling agencies are going to tell you your career's already over. You know, it's too late.
All right. So what have we ascertained from this? If you dress lamb up as mutton, men might find that attractive.
Well,
Okay.
well, I mean, like both men and women find young people attractive. Young people who have been through puberty. They find those people attractive, right? I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Not every single person, but it's not unnatural to find somebody who is young but has, you know, is physically mature, to find them attractive.
Well, at least according to fashion industry, the and because this is like really murky territory.
It
I
is.
don't want to get into it too much. The fact remains that if you dress a young girl up to make her look like she's older, is that pedophilia? Really? Okay, well, what if you like you CGI her to make her look older? Is that pedophilia? Like,
Yeah.
you know, what if you superimpose her on the image of a similar looking woman who's, you know, 20, 27? Is that pedophilia? Like,
Yeah.
seriously, this is getting ridiculous. That entire fucking documentary is ridiculous. I don't really want to talk about the fact that, you know, fashionistas seem to fetishize young women. Gross, by the way. Let them grow up. But regardless, I think that an element of our sexual attraction is, of course, having maturity, a certain level of psychological and emotional maturity. But that be that as it may, it's obvious that there's a huge body of women who like to look at really young girls, and you know whatever.
Body
We
of
don't condemn them.
women. Women.
Yeah, in
sorry.
fashion,
Yeah,
fashion,
and
we
there's a
don't
body
condemn
of
them.
there's just a huge body
Yeah,
of
but
women.
it doesn't matter because we already condemn them, Karen. But we do
Yeah.
not condemn the women. So there's a huge body of women who like to look at young girls and fashion
And young boys.
and young boys, and there's a huge body of women who like to touch and rape young boys and young women probably as well. And you know what?
Think about that chick who what was her name? Was she the anti-vaxxing celebrity who assaulted, sexually assaulted,
not Jenny McCarthy,
Justin,
right? She was
Jenny McCarthy sexually assaulted Justin Bieber in front of an entire auditorium full of people on stage. Right? She forced a kiss on him and grabbed his ass in front of everybody, and you could see the look on his face. He was like, "Oh, fuck, you old bitch, get away from me." Gross. I think he was like 14.
And so anyway, we've established this, going back to Warren Farrell's comment, although I was trying to get away from it. it's exactly the same as what this guy would say. This guy would most likely say that left unchecked by feminism, toxic masculinity would have men lusting after everything that moves. Men would support each other in lusting after young teenagers. So I'm not exactly sure why he's condemning Warren Farrell for a feminist statement that no doubt he buys into.
Well, like it's exactly like that Rebecca Sullivan, Professor Rebecca Sullivan of the University of Calgary, right? Saying of the men's rights activists, what men's rights activists are going for is mostly sexual rights. As in other words, and this is a verbatim quote, as close as I can remember it, as in, if only we could have sex with whoever and whatever we want, whenever we want to, then maybe we wouldn't have to rape you.
What the fuck? I think you're projecting with that one.
I think so.
Like, seriously, get your house in order before you start saying stuff like that, you so-called advocates for women. Because where I'm standing, women have a lot more leeway to expect people to be sexual with them than men do. Not only is it legally, it's a legal non-issue if a woman forces herself on a man or another woman. It seems to be an article of faith that unattractive women should be attractive, which basically means that they should have sexual access to people that they would otherwise not have sexual access to by virtue of being women.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
whatever.
It's not okay to have a preference for a woman who is not fat
or
right?
ugly. That's lookism and fat phobia.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you shouldn't. If you're a movement with beliefs that make it
not having sex with somebody who wants to have sex with you is a form of bigotry.
Yeah, then you don't have any right to cast aspersions on another movement. And I've never heard, well, in some like non-public way, sometimes men will talk about how feminists in many ways expect it to be a free market, or not a free market, but expect socialism when it comes to money, but not when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting idea, because now the EU's debating about considering sexual and reproductive access to be a human right. So when it becomes a human right,
but only for women.
Yeah, I know that's. I mean, okay, this is like so. Let's get on with this, because I'm tired of this topic.
Okay.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
4 of 5 suicides are men.
That was true when he said it, but it's actually closer to 3 out of 4 now.
Oh, well, that's definitely a discrediting of him. I thought we went over this now. Over this one, Brian. We went over this one the last time.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right. While you are finishing
No, I'm going
eating,
up to the next thing. Do we have more donations? I'll just play the next clip. Hold on.
Yeah. We do have more donations, so I should read them out.
All right.
Very generous donation from Michael O, who gave us $750. Thank you, Michael O. I'm actually going to see if I can get somebody in the Netherlands, because we went to Amsterdam, somebody in the Netherlands to maybe put on a local remote viewing, local remote event with an ICMI remote ticket. So if you're in the Netherlands and you're listening to me now and you're interested in that, just drop me a line at admin at badgerpod.com, feedthebadger.com. That's admin at feedthebadger.com. And I can maybe put together a mailing list to see if we can construct something, because, I'm obsessive about doing more shit. Like, I have free time and I'd rather just arrange remote events around the world so more people can see this and enjoy this content than take care of myself, which is a bad thing. I know some people are like,
shame on you, but it'll be soon over.
Yeah, it'll be soon over, and then I can, die. No, sorry, shit, I shouldn't say that.
You
Don't
can't
worry, guys. Don't worry,
die.
guys. I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die literally. I just meant like fall
Lie
asleep for a
down
week.
for a while.
Yeah, like fall asleep for a week. I actually had a comment on I think the fundraiser video out to this that was pretty. It was funny in a way, because it was from this individual called Kazan Kitty, who said, what is you and your friends spending one weekend at a nice hotel at the expense of your patrons and other fools going to do for men's rights? It's like, seriously, you think this is a vacation? I planned a convention to take a vacation.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
No. Are you? Okay.
This is one of the things that drives me crazy the most is like when, you have people fund your vacations, and it's like,
who vacations in Chicago anyway?
Oh, don't say that, Brian. We're trying to big it up. Chicago's a very nice destination. The people coming to the convention can vacation
I agree.
in Chicago.
Chicago is a great city. I grew up here. I live here. I do think it's a great city. However, it's just not at the top of people's places to go and vacation in the summer list. It's just
true.
It's more like Disneyland, or I want to see Spain. I want to go to Versailles. I want to go to the Ireland and see the or I want to see the castles in Germany. Nobody says I want to go to Chicago for my summer vacation.
Maybe they should, because again, it's a really beautiful city with this incredible history of architecture.
Yes,
New World architecture.
What I was actually saying was, I don't like traveling. I detest traveling. I choose not to travel. I have been on, other than when I was a child and being dragged on road trips by my with my parents and my two sisters, where we would usually drive to Banff and Jasper and, Whistler's Mountain and all of those things, right? Other than that, I've only been on one vacation in my life, and that was another vacation funded by my parents. They had a big, not huge, $170-something thousand windfall, because they sold their house at the exact right moment, before the housing bubble burst. You had a huge burst in the US. We had a smaller one in Canada, and they sold at the exact right time, right? They bought a condo, and a year later they sold their house. And during that year, their house appreciated it became almost twice as valuable as what it was appraised for, when they initially bought the condominium that they wanted, right? Bought it before it was built. So essentially what I am is, I'm just like a homebody. I don't want to go places. I don't want to travel. I don't enjoy it.
Can I do a fundraiser to just stay at home? And
like I would
we do that.
Yeah, no, it's like I would love to just do a fundraiser to say Karen doesn't have to actually fly anywhere for the next 6 months. Make that happen.
Can I do that? Can I do like a fundraiser? Alison gets to stay at home for 4 weeks and not worry about shit. That would be nice. That would actually be a vacation. And then I could just hang out, and do stuff that I enjoy doing, like ATVing and walking around in the woods, as opposed to, I don't mind doing conference organization, but it's not a vacation. It's actually really stressful. A lot of the time I'm waking up at like 4 a.m. thinking, oh my fucking God, all of the things that I have to keep track of and make sure gets done. And then just dealing with constant questions, and it's not like I'm complaining as such, but it's not a vacation. It's not restful.
It's work.
It's work. And it's work that I'm happy to do, because I want to make sure that the men's rights movement grows, it gets more attention, it becomes successful, it has an event that brings people together to network, to make contacts with each other, gets companies that are nonprofits that are dealing with men's services in contact with people who are willing to drop money on it. So it's important event, and I'm happy to do it. But at the other hand, it's not restful, and it's a lot of damn work. So to say that I'm doing this to it's not even something that makes me angry. It's something like do you have to work to be that stupid? Is this something you've cultivated? Is this a skill that you've worked on throughout your entire life to not have any awareness of how things work? Seriously. Anyway.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it's just like I've said numerous times to numerous people that I don't like traveling. Right? It's no secret that I really don't like traveling. It's really not. I don't like to turn down events. Right? Like I don't, when Mythicist reached out to me again this year and said, "Will you come to the Mines thing?" I was like, oh, okay. And apparently there's something happening in Norway in November. And I was like, okay. But it's not like I enjoy it. I was essentially I said to the owners, like to Paul, right, and Mike Buchanan, who are sort of the people who are, nominal heads of this conference, right? I think Paul owns it outright. Mike's been so involved that he's sort of got a share of the interest in it, or as a stakeholder. But I told them, if it's not in North America this year, I'm not going. I'm just not, right? Because, fuck you, and fuck that flight to and from Australia. Or wherever it is, India, or wherever it is. No, not going to happen. Not going to be there. So it's just like, and next year, wherever it's going to be next year, I may not be there. And it's because it always happens in the summer. We have 2 seasons here in Edmonton. We have winter and construction, right? I have a yard, right, that has been completely neglected. I'm going to get fined by the city at any moment for having my weeds overgrown, right? My fence isn't finished, and I don't have a freaking paved driveway. I don't have a patio in the back. I don't have any of that done because why? Why? Because I'm on the committee to help organize this fucking bullshit, and it always happens in the goddamn summer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be gone for almost all of August. I'm going to be in Toronto at the start of August for the Cafe National Conference. I'm going to be, in Chicago, 16th to 18th. I'm going to be at Mines in New Jersey at the end of August. Right? When am I supposed to get any of this shit done?
September.
Yeah.
Well, and it's been raining almost nonstop for a month here.
Okay, let's get back to this though. As much as I commiserate
also,
with you, and
who the hell vacations in New Jersey? That's even worse. Okay,
I know.
All right, okay, come on. Let's do what's on the tin. I mean, we've already wasted an hour yapping about this and complaining about that.
Tell me about it.
And if you do want to support Honey Badger Radio putting on the International Conference on Men's Issues in August, or Chicago in August, August 16th, 17th, and 18th. This Honey Badger Brigade is underwriting this conference. So you know what? If I'm going to take a vacation, I deserve it. Because I'm taking the risks to make this happen and make this the biggest ICMI yet.
Yes.
And we've already surpassed the numbers of previous ICMIs. So if you're able to get a ticket and attend, because bums and seats is the most important thing. If you're able to run, bike, drive, take a train, get on a Greyhound bus, and get your ass in that venue, do it.
Yeah, no, and also because we have an unprecedented amount of interest from the press this year.
Holy shit! Like we put out nothing for the press. Like, I don't know how much more nothing we could have done. We basically put out one press release to A Voice for Men and Justice for Men and Boys and left it at that.
And Barbara Kay and you know, a handful of other people who we know are sort of friendlies in the press.
Yeah, and that was it. And for some reason, there's a huge amount of interest. So get your asses to the convention. If you're in the Chicago area, there is no excuse for you not to be in that convention. Get an exhibit ticket. That's like $69. Get an exhibit ticket. You will be able to watch the streams in our video hall. You won't be able to go into the room, but you'll be able to watch and you'll be able to see things happening, and you will be in a place with all of our speakers. So potentially they'll be walking around. You might be able to pull them over for an autograph or to have a few words. So it's worth it even to just get in at an exhibit level. If you have a little bit more, go for a day ticket. But if you're in the Chicago area, if you can drive to Chicago, if you can bus to Chicago, if you can take a train or a plane to Chicago, do it. This is our moment. We need to get there. We need to show up en masse to show the kind of community support we have for this event. This is the crown jewel of the men's rights community. And like Karen was saying, there's a lot of media interest, and we need to show them what we can do. Do it. And if you don't do it and you're able to do it, it's on your head. It's on your head. I'm going to just leave it at that.
Yeah, we chose Chicago because it's basically in the middle of the country. It's one of the easiest places to get to. So,
and it's one of the cheapest airports to fly to as well.
Yes. So, and there's trains that go there. I mean, it's basically like an epicenter. You know, my old grammar school teacher used to tell me that if the Germans had won World War II and conquered the United States, Chicago would become New Berlin because of its perfect location. So, like, it's basically Hitler approved, and it's MAGA country. So, you know, you should probably come out to the ICMI and make this thing go full
Come
circle.
out to the ICMI and enjoy the roving bands of black people in whiteface with MAGA hats putting nooses on people's necks.
Exactly.
Okay. Or maybe not, but do come. You know, we're actually in Rosemont, which is a much more probably conservative community, much calmer. But get there, show up, be counted if you can. And if you absolutely can't, you're like, you know what, there's no way I can make it. Get a remote ticket. Consider hosting an event where you are. Remote tickets are going to count towards attendance. So go to feedthebadger.com, get a ticket, get a remote ticket, support this event, because this is when it matters and where it matters for advocacy that men and boys should matter. Okay.
All right, so I skipped ahead to, did we talk about, did you guys respond to him? We're talking about male homelessness. So I jumped ahead to that bit. Homelessness?
No, we haven't responded to, I don't remember.
I'll just play the clip. Let me know if you remember
play the
it.
clip.
Okay.
Homelessness
is a man broken.
I like this one because they're putting their thumb on the scale a bit. Single homeless. So if you're married and homeless or have a child and homeless, you don't count. In truth, men are 60.2% of all homeless people. In homeless shelters, 55.4%
No, they're not 60.2% of all homeless, of what we considered homeless.
They are 80+% of those sleeping rough.
Yeah.
The unsheltered homeless.
Yeah, that's what we consider homeless, Guy. The people on the streets, the men on the streets.
I think
not people who are sleeping on someone else's couch or have the ability for family to take them in.
Yeah, or maybe people who are living out of their car or something. Well, he does talk about that as well. I think he tries to. So he's clearly going through the eGuard Watches ad and the Red Pill documentary, cherry picking what he can sort of take apart. So if it's not in the Red Pill documentary, then he'll go to the eGuard Watches ad, which, you know, kind of like does a more simplified list of issues, because maybe that's easier for him to dismantle.
All right, that may be easier for him to dismantle, but here's the thing. He's already being dishonest. How the people in the homeless shelters aren't indicative of the people who are homeless. Women get preferential placement in homeless shelters. Okay?
Yeah.
So do children.
So do
And
children.
most of the people who are homeless with children are women.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's because women are more likely to receive custody of children even if they do not have stable living circumstances.
There you
Regardless,
go.
here's the thing. This is really dishonest because we're already dealing with a population that doesn't reflect overall homelessness. So not only is he dismissing rough sleepers, well, okay, Brian, he addresses that. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see
yeah.
what he
Let's
says.
play the whole
Give him
clip
an
before we
opportunity.
respond.
Men, which is actually pretty even. But when it comes to actually living out on the street, 70.3% are men. Again, men don't like asking for help. And now that I've mentioned shelters, I'm gonna have to talk about domestic violence.
Okay, I'm pausing it there.
All right.
So go ahead.
Okay, it couldn't have anything to do with the fact that when they actually did a study in Toronto, I believe, of homeless men, right? They found that 60% of them were brain injured. 60% of them were brain injured.
Sure.
And the majority of those with brain injuries suffered their brain injury before they were adults.
And also you got the fact that there's a lot of homeless people that have mental health issues, they're veterans, you know, whatever, and he's basically trying to just conclude or hand wave it by saying, well, men don't ask for help, that's why that's happening. It's just that, you know, you might have like a dent in your head because of like something that happened to you as a young man, and maybe you've just never been able to get it together and you just don't have a home, but you know it's your fault because if you'd have just asked for help, we would have been able to give you help. But they don't ask, well, that's why. That's it.
And if you don't trust the people who are helping you, or if you don't feel safe in the shelter itself, right? Or if you have symptoms that make you make it such that the homeless shelter no longer wants to deal with you, will not shelter you anymore, does not want to take you in anymore because of those issues, right? Like, it's not that every one of those men who's sleeping on the street rather than going to a shelter is just not asking for help. A lot of them have essentially been banned from homeless shelters because of the problems that they cause, because they have unaddressed mental issues, mental illness, or unaddressed consequences from brain injury.
Where is he getting that number of 70%?
Because who knows? Who knows?
The
right?
number I'm getting from the UK, and I can't find the US number looking on Google, is about 86% are male.
Yeah, the count for unsheltered homeless is actually everybody who actually does the research says that it's probably an undercount. No matter what number they come up with, it's next to impossible to count these people, right? And why is it? Because they don't have any fixed address. They're not they're not going to fill out a census form, right? There is no question on the census form, are you homeless, right? Because if you're homeless, you don't have a fixed address.
Yeah, so it's an undercount, and then it's also difficult to, and the thing is that once again, using the number in homeless shelters and then looking at the disparity between, even if we, let's take it at face value, 60% or 70% are homeless is what he said. And 70% are, I think it was 60 or 70%. No, I think it was 70%.
55% in the shelters.
70% on the streets.
70% on the streets. Yeah.
Okay, you just indicated that that's a huge men's issue there, my friendo.
Yeah.
Because one is homelessness could be considered to be a result of gender neutral factors like domestic violence, like mental health issues, unemployment. But the shelter rate is not a gender neutral factor. It's who we care about. And we most definitely care about women more than men if more women are being sheltered proportionately greater rate than they are actually homeless. So you've just indicated a stupendous men's issue right there.
Yeah, but he just blames it on toxic masculinity that men.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This is the other thing. I have looked extensively At what they are actually referring to when they say that male norms cause men to not seek help. I've actually done the research and looked at the studies and what they actually mean. What they mean is that men don't want to be a burden. They don't want to be a burden on people. And they call that stoicism. And then that Chinese whisper game starts, and it goes from stoicism to male norms to traditional masculinity to toxic masculinity. And it started explicitly. What the men are saying is they do not want to be a burden. You have to be strong in order not to be a burden. And so these guys don't want to be a burden. And they don't feel, because that they've identified with their worth in terms of not being a burden and in fact being strong for others, they don't think they deserve help when they need it. But let's see what he has to say. I guess the next thing will be the domestic violence thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's continue.
As of 2016, there's only a single domestic violence shelter for men. My initial reaction was that there needed to be thousands more women's shelters because that many more women are being battered. But as it turns out, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will be victims of physical violence by an intimate partner.
If your alarm bells and red flags aren't going off, they should be. That statistic is true.
Well, yes, because, you know, your penis might fall off if you accept that men are could potentially be that vulnerable to women.
Yeah, well, you got to hear his counter argument to this.
Okay, no, I'm just saying that's where the counter argument. That's the motivation.
Oh
for the
yeah,
counter-argument.
of course. Well, he's like, I can't accept this. But yeah, you wait till you hear this bit.
However, the definition of physical violence in that survey includes literally any form of physical violence, from pushing to slapping to throwing something at you. From the infographic attached to that same source, women are far more likely to be afraid, far more likely to be concerned for their safety, and far more likely to develop PTSD. Why is that?
Okay, wait, stop it right here. And I'm not going to let anybody talk because this is pissing me the hell off. You just got through saying that men don't want to recognize being vulnerable, and you are a case in point, because they, I don't know, have the toxic masculinity, or they don't want to accept help. Well, if you're going to ask a man, are you afraid? What do you think he's going to say? Mm-hmm. No. And to quite frank, these guys should be afraid, because a lot of them will end up dead or in jail or seriously hurt because women escalate and escalate and escalate, just like in many cases men will do if they're domestic abusers. So they should treat it with all seriousness and feel a little bit of fear. So the problem isn't that women feel more fear than men. Okay, so I gotta get my thoughts out correctly.
Okay.
On the one hand, he's saying that men not feeling things is toxic masculinity. And then he's appealing to the fact that men are not feeling things to justify how men are not as great a victim as women. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it's like essentially when Adam Jones pointed out in his paper called "The Globe and Males," right? It was essentially a pun on the Globe and Mail newspaper in Canada, and how they report on violent victimization of men versus women, right? And he pointed out a study, a StatsCan survey that indicated that the article in the newspaper said, a Stats Canada study has just indicated that women are equally likely to report being victims of stranger violence or whatever. Okay, women in urban centers in Canada report being victims of stranger violence to police. The statement was, Stats Canada reports that women are more afraid of violence than men, and for good reason. For the first time ever, women in urban centers are as likely as men to report being victims of stranger violence to police, right? Okay, so literally, women are more afraid for a good reason because they are at equal risk. Right. But then he goes and he looks into it. Right. And he's like, okay, so we're looking at these police reports, and these women are reporting, like the predominance of women reporting an assault to police are reporting a shove or a slap, right? And the predominance of men reporting assault just out and about in public, right, are reporting from the emergency room. Right? So, and it's because a shove or a slap is not worth the bother of reporting for a man. Right?
I know.
Because, and the woman.
Because of what they call toxic masculinity.
I know. And also because females have what I call toxic femininity, and they feel endangered by a man looking at them sideways. Right? And Lord forbid somebody push them in the freaking subway or on the bus, right? That's a reportable offense. Report that to the police immediately, right?
Okay, let me say something. And the fundraiser is slow. We actually are substantially higher than that. Okay, if his statement on toxic masculinity, if we got rid of toxic masculinity, those numbers would be vastly different, or as he defines them. If we got to a state where men felt like they deserved services and they deserved to be heard when they were afraid, well, I mean, then there's a certain amount of biology here, because men have a much higher risk assessment relative to women. So this is almost irrelevant.
Yeah, hugely higher threshold of risk, and they respond to external threats in a completely different way from women. Women respond with apprehension. Men respond with vigilance. So,
and in fact,
which could be described as emergency preparedness, which does not, like, so if you are in a state of emergency preparedness, and I have been in this state before, right? Fear, you feel a moment of fear, and it's like your stomach is like trying to force itself up through your throat, and your intestines are trying to force themselves down through your anus. Right? That's what it feels like for about a moment. And then you realize something fucking serious is going down, and everything just goes completely dead. And all you see is what you need to do. That's all you see, right? And I don't think that women in general have that response to those emergency situations. I don't think they do.
All right.
I think that that's a male response. It's a typical male response. And so, of course, they're not going to feel afraid. Of course, they're going to feel an initial moment of fear, and then everything's just going to go quiet, and they're going to see what they need to do.
But what's incredible to me is simultaneously with condemning toxic masculinity, which is why part of the reason probably why we see the effect that men are reporting less fear.
Yeah, and then using it as an excuse to not
and then using it as an excuse
they're being victimized.
Yeah, this. You can't have it both ways, friendo. You can't simultaneously say that men need to be able to feel more fear and need and vulnerability, and then say, well, look, they feel less need and fear and vulnerability, therefore they're less vulnerable. Har, 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 har. Fucking seal noises.
Yeah, no.
Get this man a fish.
It's like honestly, it's sort of like this thing that, the primary complaint of feminists is not that women are more likely to be victimized while walking alone at night or whatever, but that they feel unsafe, right? And I'm like, and that's because people keep saying when they say, well, I feel unsafe. Well, you shouldn't, because you're actually safer than a man walking the same block alone at night. You're safer from violence. So, like, why is your fear special, right?
Actually, if you walked with the guy, you're probably more protective.
Well, yeah, but it's like what we're looking at is feminists saying, well, yes, but it's because the culture oppresses us by telling us we're in danger. And it's like,
who the fuck's doing that?
Yeah, you stupid feminists. But as, like people's parents do too, right? But then I'm thinking, okay, so the culture oppresses you because it cares about your safety. and your teenage brother, right? So you're a 16-year-old girl and you have a 17-year-old brother, and he's at 3 times the risk you are of being assaulted in public. Okay, just walking down the street minding his own business. Okay. And your parents are telling you to be safe, and they don't bother telling him to be safe.
Or they
right?
make him responsible for her safety.
Yeah. And it's like, so, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, okay, so you're saying because people care about your safety enough to tell you to be safe and draw your attention to how you are vulnerable, right? That means you're oppressed, and people care so little about your safety, despite the 3 times greater liability you have to being assaulted. They're like, yeah, no, that's fine, just go, you'll be fine, right? That guy, right, whose parents don't seem to understand that he's at 3 times the risk you are, that he's privileged for not being told to take care of himself and take care of his safety, be aware of his surroundings, all of those things, right?
And of course, if something does happen, people will say, "Well, why weren't you aware?" Also, well, nobody ever told me.
Why were you wearing your earbuds while walking at midnight?
Yeah, nobody ever told me that I was actually 3 times more likely to be assaulted than a woman. I just figured, male invulnerability would
Yeah,
just
well,
float me
nobody
along.
told me. They kept telling my sister, be extra careful, be extra careful, be extra careful. They never told that to me, so I figured I
Yeah,
was
but
like
they also
freaking free and clear.
But the other thing, Karen, is they don't tell that to boys. They tell that to girls because they care. Like they
They
actually
care about the safety of girls.
they care about the safety of girls. They also see any kind of violation to a girl as being far worse than any kind of similar violation to a boy. So they're like, he can handle being mugged and cracked upside the head with a brick, but she can't. She
Mm.
just, well, she can't even handle being shoved, and she needs to know that.
Well,
She
you
can't
know
be
what?
handled looking. She can't handle somebody looking at her cockeyed. She needs to know that.
You want to know something hilarious, right? I'm going to share a story. My guy used to, when he was a teenager, he used to work at West Edmonton Mall, and so he would take a bus home to where we live. We're in north central Edmonton, so he would take one bus. It was about an hour long ride, and he'd get home. He'd get off at the bus stop around midnight, and he'd have to walk down 118th Ave, which is sort of not the. I mean, there's a pawn shop, a liquor store, and a check cashing freaking place on every block, right? That's the kind of neighborhood it is. And so he would walk home late at night, and one night he realizes that behind him there are these 2 men, and they're sort of they were walking together, but then they started to flank him, right? One was walking close to the buildings along the sidewalk, and the other was out onto the actual road trying to flank him. And he was a guy who was taking boxing and all kinds of stuff. Like he was an athlete, right? So he was not particularly concerned about not being able to survive something. But when one of them stepped out in front of him and made an aggressive move, he just started swinging, and he beat the shit out of both of them. Right? And then on his way further home, right? Because we have a local police detachment really close by. He stopped by the police station, and he reported the incident, and he had some concerns because he was like, these guys look like they're in a gang, right? And I feel like because of what I did, I'm going to be a target now. And the cops just said, well, when they beat the shit out of you, when they attack you, when the gang comes after you, right, then we'll do something. But at this point, really, there's nothing we can do.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, and it's like, yeah, no, and it's like, so I mean, like, you think about, okay, so here's you have all these women who go in and they report their sexual assaults, and the police don't take them seriously, and they don't blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, so like my guy was about to be rolled by two, and I think he was like 16 at the time, by two adult men, right, wearing gang uniforms, um, and he's concerned for his safety, and the police are like, yeah, whatever.
Well, look at what they would do with a domestic if a woman was saying something about that, and we're just talking about one guy, not a gang of them. So, and they would take that very seriously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it works. I just think that you don't get to use the results of what you call toxic masculinity
to make excuses for not offering services for men.
Yeah, you don't get to use that. If you're going to call it out, then you call it out all the way, including right here.
And look at these numbers, right? Okay, so we got about a fifth and a fifth and a fifth of men, right? Okay, and more than half of women, right? Okay, so that totally justifies the 2,000 shelters for women only in the United States and the one shelter for men.
Yeah, especially since men often they have problems with risk assessment in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I've heard stories from like a man being assaulted by and killed by two women, barehanded. Like, and probably part of that is he didn't want to hit back. But it's like at that point in time, if you're a man being assaulted by two women, it's deadly violence. You need to start defending yourself. And it's replete with stories like this of men underestimating women and then getting killed because of it. So they have risk assessment that's a little inaccurate. And women also have a risk assessment that is massively inaccurate.
Yeah, in terms of, feeling afraid. Like I just find it so weird because when I was 12, we had a dog. We got a dog. I talked my parents into getting a dog, and we also had a VCR. And this was at a time we were like the first people on our block who had a VCR, and so and you had to drive halfway across the city to find a place that would rent movies, right? Like it was just not on. You didn't have a Blockbuster on every corner. We had a Crazy Mike's video store that you had to drive 25 minutes to get to, right? And so we would rent every weekend. We would rent like 5 or 6 movies, and we would just marathon them, right? And so it'd be like 3 a.m, and then we'd all be like, okay, time for bed. And my dad would ask me, have you taken the dog for a walk today? And I'd be like, oh, fuck. No, I haven't. And he'd be like, out you go, take the dog for a walk, right? Dog needs exercise, go take her for a walk. So I'd be out 3 a.m, walking the dog at age 12. Never felt endangered. I felt a little uncomfortable the couple times that a police cruiser pulled up and asked me, what are you doing out at this time of night, and then sort of slowly escorted me home. That was a little awkward, but I've never felt ill at ease walking at night. Like I live in a bad neighborhood, right? And I lived in a bad neighborhood before I moved to this neighborhood. And I've never felt ill at ease walking at night. And it's not because I have like, huge, like awesome kung fu skills or anything like that. Right? It's just that
because your risk assessment is higher. You have more tolerance for risk, most likely.
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling to have a more tolerance for risk. I don't have a great tolerance for risk. I just do it anyway. you know.
Yeah, I know you have a hard time.
Yeah, but I do
Yeah,
it
with
anyway.
that. There you go.
Well, I'm not actually masculinized. I don't actually have more. It doesn't seem like I have more testosterone than normal. So I probably have a normal female expectation or understanding or concern over risk. I just do it anyway. I can't explain why, but I'm just a weirdo.
You are
Anyway.
kind of weird.
Yeah. So once again, we are taking support, like financial support, for the International Conference on Men's Issues 2019 in Chicago, 16th, 17th, and 18th. If you're able to come, please do, because it's critical to show the kind of support this community has for these issues. And if you absolutely can't come, please help. The fundraiser is at feedthebadger.com. I want to thank just give me a second here. I got to go there. I got to wait for WooCommerce to load it up. And I want to thank Robert M., who gave us $1,000, and Safe Demon, who gave us $10. And I'll check to see if they put anything. Nope, they haven't written anything. Did Safe Demon? Nope. I should have double checked to make sure they hadn't written anything. Nope. You guys are not very talkative. Perhaps you're intimidated by the purchase process. All right. Anyway, if you wanna join these very generous donors, please go to feedthebadger.com and let's make this happen. All right.
Okay.
Shall we continue?
Yes. We have some more like what the fuck going on. Sorry, I'm getting messages from Skype. Okay. So let's play the next clip. Here we go.
Why is that if just as many men are victims? Because when we look at physical violence that actually results in injury, it's 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men. This is from her 2010 source.
Okay, can I answer this stupid thing? Because men have denser bones and muscles.
Yeah, and women bruise more easily too.
And they bruise more easily. But I can guarantee that once a weapon is involved, it's a lot more equal.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to conclude that because women suffer, like he's trying to conclude that this study shows that women, the violence against them is supposedly more severe, therefore it's not equal. You should finish the clip first, because I think it.
If it's 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men, then we should have 7 shelters for men for every 25 shelters for women. Something like correct my math, right?
Yeah, it's still under.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's continue.
Yeah.
Link down below. For every man that needed to go to a hospital as a result of domestic violence, 5 women did.
For every man that decided that he actually going to go to a hospital despite his toxic masculinity that kept him from seeking help from a hospital. I know this, right? This is me that we're talking about, okay? I don't want to go to the hospital, right? When I was freaking dying in Toronto and the security guard at the event asked me, do you need an ambulance? I was like, I don't think so, right? And then 5 minutes later, when the ambulance attendants arrived, I was like, thank God that fucking guy didn't listen to me.
Oh man, yeah.
This has nothing to do with your actual level of risk, with your actual level of injury, right? Women go to the fucking hospital because they have a little bit of I don't know if this is a zit or if it's a lesion, right? Yeah, no. I go to the doctor, right? To the doctor's office, and 90% of the people in the fucking room are women.
Okay. I'm just going to put this out there. Once again,
I knew a man.
Apparently, I'm not going to put this out there.
Yeah, no, you're not. I know a man, okay, who sliced his fucking hand open working in his barn. Okay, he's an oil patch guy. He was doing the 2 weeks of work, 1 week off, and he was working in his barn, and he sliced open his hand, and he lived, I don't know, I guess he just couldn't justify the 15-minute drive to an acute care clinic or a walk-in clinic or a hospital, right? So what did he fucking do? What do you think he did?
Duct taped his hand?
Stitched it himself with an upholstery needle.
Oh God! Did he at least
that just
sterilize
Karen,
it?
that just means that it didn't actually happen because he didn't go to a hospital, so he never actually got cut. It just didn't happen.
Injured.
No,
Yeah, he
that
never got
happened.
injured. Yeah, no, and it's like, no, of course he sterilized the needle. His wife was standing there going, "You need to go to the hospital," and he was like, "I'm not going to the hospital," and she's like, "You need to go to the hospital," and he was like, "I'm not going to the hospital," and then finally she was like, "Fine, here you go," and she brought out her sewing kit, and she ran a lighter over the needle and the thread and the thread, and there you go.
Shit.
That and he did it, and he said he would never do it again.
Yeah.
He said it was atrocious and horrible, and he looked at his face in the mirror afterwards, and it was like milk white, and broken out in a cold sweat.
Okay, officially, this man should not be able to rely on the effects of what he calls toxic masculinity to make his points. Seriously, dude.
Yeah, no, I'm just like my dad, when he was working one day, oh God, I think I was about 15. He was a heavy duty mechanic. A transmission fell out of a truck while he was working on it, and it landed on his hand, and it bent his thumb completely back against his wrist. Completely dislocated it. And he popped it back into joint and finished his shift.
Extreme ownership.
And then a week later, he was like, "Why is my thumb and my hand still tingling?" And my mother was like, "You should have gone to the doctor."
On my husband's side of stories about that too, and sometimes it's actually probably a good idea because his grandfather lost use of his hand because he didn't go to the doctor after getting it injured in like an accident. And he should have gotten a tetanus shot. So he ended up losing his ability to use his hand. It just ended up like stuck in a claw shape. So I mean, but here's like the ultimate point here is this. This guy would condemn toxic masculinity. And yet here he is using the effects of toxic masculinity in part, because part of it is also biological, for men to downplay their injuries, to downplay their needs, say, I don't want to be a burden, so I'm not going to go to the doctor, I'm not going to get help, I'm not going to go to services, etc. He condemns that, and then he uses the effect of it
as an excuse to make his point. And so, it's like, and I just wanted to say, my mom was very similar to my dad, right? One time she was digging in the yard and almost cut her toe off with the spade because she used to work in bare feet. And she sat there on the front porch bleeding while my dad was chatting with the neighbor, and then finally hollered, over here, just so you know, like, there's a situation. But she actually did go to the doctor. When she cut herself, when she had, an injury, she would actually go to the doctor. She didn't whine about it. She didn't cry about it. She didn't freak out about it. She was always very calm about when she would injure herself, right? One time she had her hand in a glass. She was washing it, and the glass broke, and it cut the back of her hand from one side to the other, and the wound opened up because the skin's very tight there, right? The wound opened up about an inch wide, right? It was quite gruesome. And she just calmly told me, Karen, can you phone Dr. Elfiki's office and let him know that I'll be in and I need stitches in about 15 minutes, right? So, I mean, like, she was very nonchalant about injuring herself. She never really panicked the way a lot of people do. But she was never quite as stubborn as my dad about going to the doctor. So, you still even have tough women who are like hardcore, who are more willing to go to the fucking doctor
Well, here's
than a
okay.
lot of men.
All right, let me put it this way. All right, and I'm gonna work through this thought, and I'm gonna ask Karen to listen to me, and then
No.
explain what the fuck I'm saying. All right, because she usually can capture this. Okay, so we have this individual who says men don't get help because of toxic masculinity. I guarantee he says that. And men don't feel their feelings because of toxic masculinity. And then he points to the fact of men not being afraid of situations that maybe they should be afraid of as evidence that men don't need the same level of help as women. And then he further points to all of this to support his belief system in which men overall are a burden on society because society gives them privileges that it doesn't give women, and society promotes violence against women and promotes discrimination against women and not wanting to protect and provide women in the same way it wants to protect and provide women, the whole gamut of patriarchal norms that he believes exist. So society prefers to see violence done to women versus men. Therefore, it does more violence to women versus men. Society prefers to see women sexually exploited relative to men. Therefore, it sexually exploits women more than men and doesn't care as much it cares more when men are exploited than when women are exploited. All of these other things. So society is essentially, men are a burden on society because society is constantly giving them stuff that they don't deserve, right? That's his viewpoint. He bases it on the idea that women face far more issues of violence, wage discrimination, and all this other stuff. But then he's promoting this idea that men are a burden on society. And then he points to, when we ravel it back, we play the reverse game of Chinese whispers and ravel toxic masculinity back. We go from toxic masculinity is traditional masculinity, is masculine norms, is stoicism, is men not wanting to be a burden. So he's promoting the idea that men are a burden on society, which is, feminist theory or feminist conjecture.
Well, not men. No, he's not saying that men are a burden on society. He's saying that men's rights activists.
Oh, no, he says that men are a burden on society because he would definitely agree that men are privileged over women, and privileges have to come from somewhere. Privileges are a burden that are born by another group of people that aren't privileged, right?
Yeah.
So men are a burden on society. But what I'm saying is that what he's calling toxic masculinity is men not wanting to be a burden on society.
Yeah.
So he's promoting this idea that men are a burden on society
because they don't want to be a burden on society.
Because they don't want to be a burden on society. So he's promoting this idea that men are a burden on society, which leads men to not feel like they deserve services. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It leads men to not feel like they have the right to really have needs or feel afraid. It leads men to want to be stoic because they want to be strong. They don't want to be a burden. So he's promoting the very thing that he says he's against, and this kind of circular solipsistic, I don't have a clue who the hell I am or what I'm talking about logic.
Yeah, no, it's like I said to that group of, I don't know, I just chimed in on a conversation on Twitter a few months ago, and somebody it was a bunch of Nigerian guys, I believe, right? Bunch of Twitterites from Nigeria, and they were like, what do you think of this? And I was like, I think every time I talk to a feminist, I feel like I'm living in upside down land. That's literally what I think. I think that they have everything back to front. They have, the cart isn't even before the horse. The cart is like under the horse, and the horse is humping it. That's kind of how I feel about how feminist ideology, feminist theory explains society. Right.
Maybe you shouldn't base your explanation on something that's totally unscientific. It hasn't even not been proven. Then they've actually, feminist scholars have literally proven the null hypothesis several times in patriarchy conjecture. Literally, they've proven the null hypothesis, and nobody's stopped and said, wait, you've proven the null hypothesis. That suggests that your theories are wrong. Nobody stopped and actually pointed to that and said, you got to stop talking about this now as some sort of fact. Patriarchy conjecture has been proven false. It's literally, and you, when you base your sense of reality on something that's been proven false, you end up in these weird sort of Ouroboroses of shit, where you're basically sucking your own anus. And this, like I said, this guy it's this weird sort of solipsistic blaming the thing that you're also promoting. So you're promoting this idea that men should feel like a burden on society with all this male privilege nonsense, at the same time as you're decrying the effect of telling men that they're a burden on society and they shouldn't be. Well, because the effect is that they don't want to go to doctors, they don't want to see services, they don't want to help themselves, and they don't want to feel fear. So, yeah, you got to sort of find a position here. And also, if you find the position that men actually have vulnerabilities in ways that women don't, your penis won't fall off. I promise you.
All right, moving on.
Okay, let's get to the rest of this.
Needed housing services in order to get away from domestic violence. 6 women did. The red pill tries to portray this as some both sides in equal numbers issue, but it just isn't. Domestic violence shelters were set up in the 60s and 70s when many women didn't have access to a job or money. They had no resources and nowhere to go if they were in.
Okay, but here's the thing. We're not living in the 60s and the 70s anymore. Women do have access to resources and money, right? Women have access to the job market. Women have access to no-fault divorce, right? At which point they have access to the marital property, right? And their fair share of it, right? They have access to all of these things now, right? So why is he still living in the 1960s and the 1970s when many women could not get a divorce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did not have access to the bank account, the bank account that sustained the family, right? Why is he still living in that world?
Allegedly, I would say a lot of that stuff is alleged.
No, it's actually true that in the 60s and 70s, women did not have equal access to the family finances as wives. But that was because they also had immunity from debt. They were not responsible for the marital debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were not held responsible in any way legally for the financial status of the family. They were not required to work. They could not be forced to work to support their children or their spouse. Men could, right? And they could not be held liable for the debts accrued by the family. Men could, right? And so, of course, they didn't have access to the money that they held no liability for, right? If they had equal access to the marital bank account at that time when they enjoyed blanket immunity from liability for debt, they could drain the entire bank account and frickin' spend it all on hookers and blow, right? And then leave the man holding the bag for the whole fucking thing.
I would also like to point out one thing that is as an interesting effect. I apologize, my cat has decided that she requires a significant amount of attention suddenly. But I read in a newspaper article from the time that women were 50% of stockholders at that time. So there was a substantial amount of women's wealth and wealth that women controlled. So
no, and it's like essentially women held their property at that time femme sole. Married women held their property at that time as if they were single women and as if that was their own personal private property. It was not part of the marital property. It was not part of the marital assets. It was not to be used, at least legally. It could not be put towards marital debt, right? Or family debt, right? It was held completely separate from the marriage. That's how things were back then, right? But because of that, right? Oh, you could buy stocks if you had cash. Of course you could, right? But could you get a credit card? Could you take out a mortgage? Not necessarily, right? And it wasn't because it was illegal, it was perfectly legal, right? Married and unmarried women had the right to enter into a legal contract with somebody for a loan or a mortgage, right? But lenders had the right to decline, right? And lenders frequently did decline because there was no way to hold a woman liable to repay the debt, right? And when you're a lender, you want to look at the credit score, right, of the person who's ultimately going to be held accountable for the debt. And that's either the woman's father or her husband or her future husband, right? And you're going to want that guy to co-sign because he's the only one you can really come after in court. You want to be able to identify him when the loan is taken out, right? As opposed to, I don't know, just guessing, we're going to give this woman a loan and 2 years later she's going to get married, she's going to default on it. And then now we have to go through a process of discovering who's actually responsible for her debt, right? And then we have to hold him accountable, and who knows what his credit score is, who knows how capable of paying it back he is, who knows what kind of credit risk he is, right? That's the whole fucking point, right? Is you had a group of women, you had an entire class of people who had no responsibility for their own actions legally, right? Financially, who then lenders were like, this is actually a bad risk, so we're not going to lend them money. And you didn't see any of that dynamic change, that legal entitlement to be supported financially by a husband, right? 100%, right? That you were like legally exempt from financially contributing to your family at all, and you had an entitlement to support. You didn't see any of that going away until after feminists decided that this situation where women have blanket immunity but should have all the rights, the same rights that men do, that they managed to pass a law, right, that made it illegal for lenders to discriminate based on sex.
And then women had to, have their own credit check. So it all but the thing is that prior to that, it wasn't sexist. It was just different obligations.
Well, it was sexist, but it wasn't oppression. It was based on the fact that women had an exemption.
Yeah, I know that women had an exemption, therefore it wasn't sexist, whatever you want to call it. It's like the situation where in the past, male bachelors could be discriminated against for jobs, even though if they didn't get a job, they could starve in a ditch. But the people that they privileged for getting jobs were men who were supporting women and women who were supporting themselves. Anyone who was supporting a woman, including women supporting themselves. But once a woman was no longer supporting herself, she was supposed to exit the workforce to make way for men supporting women. And then men who had nobody that they were supporting, they could go out and hang.
Yeah.
Literally. They were worthless. So it was a discrimination against both men and women in different ways, just like the credit issue.
Yeah.
But and I would actually argue in the Middle East, if you want to have the ability to use your sexuality to incite tribal violence, like for example, one woman having her headscarf stolen by a rival tribe's monkey, leading to 16 men dead to assuage her sexual honor, then you sort of have to accept that you're going to be secluded. because people don't want to end up in some, like, nobody wants that happening.
Nobody wants to end up dead because you decided you were going to go for a walk in a freaking town square full of monkeys.
Yeah. So I mean, there's an understanding there, and if women want to be considered equal in those ways, then they have to let go of being valuable. That you gotta,
Yeah.
if you want to be equal in the Middle East as women, and there's more secular societies in the Middle East where this is so. You have to let go of the idea that your sexuality is so valuable that men should die for it. And if you want to be financially equal in the West, then you have to let go of the idea that your personal well-being, financial well-being is so important that a man should go into debt for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's like these are these trade-offs that have been throughout all of human history, and oppression it doesn't make sense to call this oppression ever at any point of human history. What a surprise. And it's deeply insulting to say that the group of people that are responsible for raising men, establishing their social habits, which are the foundation of society, are oppressed.
Yeah, no.
God damn it.
That's so fucking retarded, right? Yeah, no, women, like men learn love at their mother's breasts, and then at their mother's knee, and then at their mother's apron, right? And then all of a sudden they decided that they're going to oppress women. It just doesn't even compute for me.
Okay, before I play the next clip, because I see Alison is out, like, literally herding cats. I just wanted to touch on a couple things. I want to go back to, because there was something I wanted to mention in his comment about domestic violence. Not only is it true that men don't want to be a burden and therefore are less likely to, go to a hospital, and they're also probably more likely to just deal with whatever injuries they have on their own. But just because women are more likely to go to the hospital doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually more severely injured, because women are just more likely to use the hospital than men. And before that, when they talked about how afraid, men and women supposedly feel, I don't think you can get like necessarily an accurate read of how in danger a woman versus a man is in a domestic dispute or domestically toxic situation by simply asking them how bad they feel, because women are more likely, especially because they get all the advantages for doing it, they're more likely to say, yes, I feel afraid around him, I feel threatened by him, I have PTSD, right? And men, they're not going to benefit from that, so they're like, not only are they not likely to use it because it wouldn't be useful to them, but they're less likely to actually feel that way. So you can't use that data and say that this is proof that women have it worse, even though you really, really want to. So that was those two things. And lastly, I don't think he's ever going to bring this up, but why hasn't he brought up Aaron Pittsey's work, who was in the Red Pill? Well, because he's specifically cherry picking the content he wants to argue against and leaving out the rest. And the Aaron Pittsey stuff is absolutely like, it's a central, important point with regards to domestic violence. And I wouldn't call it parody, but the lopsided way in which we view it now versus the way that, she has experienced it through her work. Also, she leaves out another thing, is the head editor at Ms. Magazine saying that domestic violence is just wife beating? Interesting, he leaves that out, because that's actually what feminists believe. So I want to play the next clip because you got to hear this next part. I have it recorded as what the fuck, so I don't know what it is that he says, but I remember saying that at the time, so I should probably it's holy shit what. So let's play that.
Okay, wait, before you go, maybe it can be explained by this whole
I do want to say just to go further into the the editor of I don't know if she's the editor of Ms. Magazine. She is one of the senior directors of the Feminist Majority Foundation, right? Catherine Spiller.
Yeah, Catherine Spiller.
And she said that domestic violence is just a cleanup word for wife beating, It was invented to de-sex, to unfairly and unjustly de-sex domestic violence, which we all know is men beating on women. We all just know it's wife battering. And then she talked about dating violence among young people, and she said, we all know it's not girls beating up boys, it's boys beating up girls, right? Which, I mean, what that reveals to me it's not just that we have this view of domestic violence being primarily something that males do to females, but the fact that for her, it's either or.
Yeah.
For her, it's either or. It's not girls beating up boys, it's boys beating up girls. If it is, there is no way in her mind that it could be both.
Exactly.
And it's also a distortion of the truth, because dating violence in particular is actually majority female. Okay, let's listen to this clip.
All right.
Domestic violence shelters were set up in the 60s and 70s when many women didn't have access to a job or money. They had no resources and nowhere to go if they were in danger. Men, on the other hand, could go to a hotel or a friend's house or even a bar if they needed to get away. Not the healthiest of options, but still options.
Are they though? So like that was what I was thinking. So if a guy just goes and puts himself in a hotel, is he actually getting taken care of? Like, and how does this make it okay? I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
So women didn't have friends.
Or going back to her mom's house?
No, they didn't have friends. Yeah. That was what I was thinking. Women don't have friends that they can go to. Like literally, if they leave the house, they have no place to go.
My mom was phoned when I was, I guess it was about like 10 years after she was done high school. So I was just like a little baby. Right, but she was called by a woman from her graduating class in high school out of the blue after 10 years, who was looking to leave her husband who was violent. And she was like, you're the only person I can think of who he would not have any idea where I'd gone, because I haven't had any contact with you in 10 years. Can you help me out? And my mom put her up for like freaking a month.
Wow, that's really generous.
No, it was like, okay, so, you know, you need to get out. This woman, she was like, this was a serious case of abuse, right? And my mom put her up for a freaking month, right? And it's like, and it's because, you know, like, even if you don't have somebody that you can go to, maybe it's not safe to go to your family because he's just going to follow you there. Maybe it's not safe to go to your best friend because he's going to follow you there. There's often somebody, right, you can reach out to that you knew 10 years ago, right, who might be willing to help you out.
I think women have more of those options.
Yes, they do.
That they have a wider network of people that they keep in contact with and are willing to actually abide by it. Men, I mean, and again, he would call it toxic masculinity, the fact that men only really rely on women and don't have a wide network of male friends who would take them up if they were experiencing domestic violence. What the hell? You're right, Brian. This is a what the fuck. This is like saying, well, men have these options, which were actually, to be honest, less available to them, to women, than they are to women. They have the option of going with a friend or family members, and be frank, friends and family members tend to want to help women a lot more than they want to help men. So this option is actually more available to women. But men had it, and also they could go to a bar, and women couldn't go to a hair salon. Like that's about as trivial as the thing that he's saying here.
Yeah.
Okay. And they couldn't go to a hotel. Right. All right. Okay. You have nothing.
They might not have had money to go to a hotel. But then again, you know, if you were a housewife, you know, and your husband controlled all of the money and gave you an allowance, there, particularly in the 60s and 70s, because you wouldn't have, you know, it wasn't like nowadays where every single transaction you know, every single time you go to the grocery store, you get this big long printout receipt, and then it's recorded electronically and it's attached to your bank card. And you know, so in 20 years, your kids can sue you for making them obese, based on like the records of everything that you've bought food wise, right? Which I predict will actually happen. But you know, at that time, so much of, you know, what people bought, what they, you know, unless he was doing everything, right? So he was working a full-time job and then he was doing all of the shopping. No, women were able to sock some money away.
Okay,
for
regardless,
themselves.
the hotel is more available to men. The family and friends option is
It's
inevitably more available
to women.
So
Yeah.
what you've done is you've cited options A, which is more available to men, and option B, which is more available to women, as a reason why men didn't need any other options,
Mm-hmm.
which makes no sense. You're right, Brian. This is a what the fuck. And
Yeah.
and again, this is what I was going to say before is I'm guessing that this is going to be explained by his incessant drive to not recognize men's vulnerabilities, like his
That's
magnetic repulsion
Yeah.
against recognizing it.
Yep.
Because here's the thing. Not only are friends and families not available to men in the way they were for women, and that would have been true throughout all of human history. It's more true that friends and family would be available to women in the 60s and 70s relative to today. But here's the thing. Not only that, but Erin Pizzey attempted to create a men's shelter to give men an additional option like she had given women, and it failed because nobody wanted to fund it. Not because there wasn't need, but because nobody wanted to fund it. So that translates into the greater society. People are more willing to open their doors to a woman than a man in need. So the very fact that there are women's shelters to begin with represents the fact that society itself wants to provide and protect women in a way that it does not men.
Oh, I'd even go so far as to say, you know, like there are there are things that people are willing to fund for boys, right? For boys and men, right? YMCA is one of them and has been, right? The reason why people are willing to fund those is because those have been marketed as turning aimless young men into productive members of society. Right? That's how they've been marketed. Not as these men are victims and we should help them, but we should take these aimless young men and turn them into productive members of society.
Right. Make them useful. It's an investment. It's not just a charity.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay, so play the next bit.
But now there are domestic violence shelters all over the country which provide a place for women and men to go. That's right,
No,
I said men.
no, you fucking dickbag. You dickbag. BuzzFeed had to go all the way to fucking Dallas to find a domestic violence shelter that helped men off campus.
Well, let's hear his argument because he's trying to bring that as the big twist. Like, let's hear the argument.
Oh, yeah, no.
All right, let me play.
Just
violence shelter that she.
What?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, do it.
Said men. The domestic violence shelter that she says is the only one for men is not the only one for men. It's just the only one that serves only men. According to her source, nearly 500,000 male victims used housing services as a result of intimate partner violence. Where did they all go? Some
let me finish.
Domestic violence shelters are for women only, but almost every domestic violence shelter will help male victims either by housing them directly or by putting them up in a hotel free of charge. There absolutely should be more domestic violence shelters for men, but framing it as if there's only one is a lie.
Yes, there is only one. because there's only one that gives them the services that they need to deal with domestic violence, rather than giving them a voucher for a hotel. What does a voucher for a hotel mean?
They're
Go to
sending them.
Travelocity and get 10% off?
No, I think they put him up. He says they put him up in a hotel for free. But what they're doing is they're saying, you need help, but you can't stay here. So here, go over there. They sent him to a hotel, right? You can't stay here, but we will give you a place to be somewhere else.
Where the services aren't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and okay, so it really boils down to Grand Prairie, right? When the feminist operators of the domestic violence shelter in Grand Prairie attended the red pill screening that we did, and they were like, we absolutely do help men. Sometimes we even fly men to the 2 shelter beds available in Alberta that are located in Strathmore, which is an hour east of Calgary. Okay, an hour's drive east of Calgary, which is essentially a 7-hour drive from Grand Prairie, right? And we do this, and we help them, legal help and counseling and all of that stuff, right? And of course, they literally grabbed the microphone and climbed up on the stage and took over, right? They weren't invited, right? They were members of the audience, but they took over.
And you didn't get them evicted?
No, we didn't kick them out. But okay, so after that, I went and I looked on their website. And their website says nothing about helping men. There's not a single mention of men as any batters on that website. And I'm like, so you actually have men coming to you for help despite the fact that you advertise that you are only for women.
And you got to know it's probably the police referring guys that they're afraid if they go home, they'll die.
Yeah, or guys who are like so desperate that they're just going to phone these people and say, I know you're only for women. Do you know anybody who can help me?
But here's the other thing. You know what he was citing as reasons why women couldn't get out of is financial. How does a man who needs to support himself financially go 7 hours from where his job is?
Yeah.
Like, that's unfeasible for most male victims. That's not help.
No.
That's not reasonable help. That can only be help for some guy who he no longer cares about his job because his wife is going to stab him in the neck. Like, this is ridiculous, and that is not equivalent in the slightest.
No.
Men need services, and they need them where they are.
Yeah.
And they need to and those services need to be as fully featured as women's services. And it doesn't matter if you want to use 1/3 of domestic violence victims or male or whatever,
or
to whatever
1/4
proportion it is. It should be there, and it should be advertised for men. And
I essentially said, okay, so you're walking by, you need a pair of boxer shorts as a guy, right? Okay, and you're walking through a mall and you see a store and it's got like a fancy freaking logo with like a pink bra on it, and everything that you see is just like women's lingerie and sleepwear and whatever. Are you going to go into that store just on the off chance that maybe there's a pair of boxer shorts somewhere on the back shelf for you? I don't think so. You're not even going to pick up the phone and call.
I get what you're saying. Alison, someone's asking if we can accept donations via mail, like snail mail.
Yes, you can go in and you can send me a check. Some people have decided to do that. And you can just submit your donation that way. Please do it through the Shut Up and Take My Money link rather than the side link, because I need to apply it when I get it. So, but you can do it, and it'll give you the instructions of how to send a check when you get to the checkout part. So
there you go.
Go to the feedthebadger.com, shut up and take my money, click that button, put in whatever amount you want, and then it'll give you the instructions of where to send the check. And I also want to thank Tyler for giving us $10. Thank you, Tyler. Yep. Oh,
ooh, we are close.
Yeah, we're now within $1,775 of the goal. In which case, because this has gone so rapidly, and as I say on the fundraiser, that our shortfall is probably 20 to 40,000. I'm probably going to increase the time on, and then do a stretch goal. And if we get to that stretch goal today, I will actually, I'll apply. I've been trying to figure out how to do this, but I'm going to try to apply the amounts that have been put through the Shut Up and Take My Money to the main fundraiser. So it'll jump quite a bit. But let's get it up to 15, and then I can put the stretch goal on and do all that. And it's going to be very exciting, at least for me. I don't know about you guys. It's going to be very exciting to unveil the total amount when I figure out how to apply it and shift it over, which is going to require probably some very painful migraine-inducing headaches with WooCommerce.
Okay,
but so anyway, the fundraiser, the final analysis, I know I overcomplicate things, is that the fundraiser is actually doing better than this. And when we hit 15,000, I will put on the stretch goal.
Awesome.
And it's going to be cool. It's going to be awesome. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so how much longer? Because I think Hannah's show's coming up in a little while. I don't know exactly what time, but we can't have the shows overlap because it's impossible. So how much longer do you want to go? We'll go for like 15 more minutes or what? What do you think?
Yeah, 15 more minutes.
15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's play the next clip.
The red pill is about understanding men and women, like everything else in life. It's a mixed bag. You've got victims and perpetrators on both sides of the fence.
That's true, but it's not even close to being 50-50. While we're on the subject of men being the victims of violence, men can also be the victims of rape. In fact, men can be raped by women, and we should call it rape when it happens.
Okay, I'm just pausing there for the
butt! The big butt! The big butt's about to be shoved in my face. I can feel it.
Yeah, there's a butt coming. But yeah, I mean, I agree with all this. We should call it rape. But you know, if he actually did his homework, he would recognize that, like, in the legal writing, women can't rape men. Like, it's not even written that way. So
yeah, no,
you would know that
UCR,
if you looked at it.
The FBI's UCR definition of rape does not include that. The CDC's definition of rape does not include that. So yeah, no, it's physically impossible for a woman forcing heterosexual intercourse on a man, or even forcing fellatio on a man to be considered a rapist and for him to be considered a rape victim.
Okay.
Not in a fair. MRAs and the red pill again try to portray this as both sides are victims in equal numbers issue, when it isn't. Not even close. From the same source where she got her 1 in 4.
Well, let me finish the clip.
Oh god, oh god, oh god.
4 men physical violence statistic, 1 in 5 women will be raped in their lifetime, while 1 in 71 men will.
Remember though, we are going by the FBI's definition of rape. Combine that, the CDC definition of rape, but also combine that with the old 1 in 5, my 1 in 5.
Here's actually the big thing. He says sexual violence. That is absolutely and utterly dishonest.
It's super dishonest, right?
Because made to penetrate is still considered sexual violence by the CDC.
Yeah,
they actually still consider a woman putting a gun to a man's face and saying, "I'm going to fuck you," or "You're going to get your head blown off," to be rape. They don't consider it rape, but they still consider it sexual violence.
And that is actually sexual violence. Yeah,
that is actually excluded from that statistic that he just cited.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm just like I'm blown away by this because because the most recent NISVS found more male previous year victims of other sexual violence made to penetrate, right, attempted or completed, than they found female victims of rape attempted or completed. They found more victims. It was something like 1.17% of women and 1.26% of men. It was like there were more men. There was a higher percentage of men who had experienced attempted or completed rape than women, so long as we define rape as putting something somewhere sexual without one of the parties' consent.
Yep. Well, it was in the last year.
Yeah, in the previous year. Well, what are we fucking worried about? Like freaking. Okay, I can understand why we would be concerned about the discrepancy, because it wouldn't be 1 in 71, it would be 1 in 17, right? If we defined rape as an equivalent act perpetrated by a man or a woman, right, against a man or a woman, okay, we would look at them as the same thing, and it would be 1 in 5 and 1 in 17, right? And we could maybe think about why there's a discrepancy there in the lifetime numbers, but in the previous year numbers, which is what we're supposed to be looking at. We're supposed to be looking at who are being victimized now.
Yep, when we talk about prevention, but it's so complicated because now 3 years in a row, although the fourth year that I've seen the statistics have changed, and I'm actually
2010, 2014, and 2016.
Yeah. But I think 2018 the statistics changed so that men in the last year reported about 2/3 as much sexual violence as women, and I'm gonna have to look really closely at the methodology.
Sexual violence, but
no, listen, Karen. I'm gonna have to look really closely at the methodology because they changed it. No doubt they're trying to disguise the fact that last year's numbers are more equal to promote. And the funny thing is that all of this effort comes from a desire to maintain the idea that men are invulnerable and women are vulnerable. And it's just a result of people like this guy's discomfort at the idea of men being vulnerable in a way that women aren't, or in a way that women are. And it's like, and the other thing is that unless you're going to argue that there's a whole bunch of men raping just because, and not because they've been subjected to abuse and violence themselves, sexual abuse and violence themselves, but just because, unless you're going to promote that idea, where are these rapists coming from? These male rapists coming from? I mean, the statistics are that the biggest single causal risk factor is having been sexually abused by a woman. And I could cite you the statistics. It actually says that the combo is sexual abuse and neglect is the biggest combined risk factor. But the biggest single risk factor by inference is being sexually abused by a woman, because being sexually abused and sexually abused by a woman is as big a risk factor as being sexually abused and neglected. But the single biggest risk factor is being sexually abused by a woman. So if you are neglected, that's not a huge risk factor for going on to rape. If you're sexually abused, that's a risk factor for going on to rape. If you're sexually abused by a woman, that's a bigger risk factor for going on to be raped, is what I'm saying. So, or to become a rapist. So these rapists aren't coming from nowhere. They're probably coming from those juvenile detention facilities where we've just been telling these women, these rapist women, here's your buffet, choose whomever you want.
Yeah.
And we might as well.
And as Adele Mercier said, who's a professor of philosophy at university in Quebec, right? That's just a reflection of heterosexuality.
Oh, Jesus.
Holy
and
shit.
So yeah, I know. She also said that because these female guards were giving these underage inmates gifts, like an extra meal.
That makes it all okay.
That makes it all okay. It makes it consensual.
That's not grooming or anything. Yeah, no, like no pedophile ever lured a kid into his van with candy.
No, but that makes
Oh,
it consensual
here,
if the kid takes the candy.
Yeah, have a gift. Like, what the
geez.
fuck?
So anyway, so the entire issue with rape is unbelievably complicated. If you think that stoic masculinity prevents men talking about domestic violence and street violence and going to get help when they're homeless or they're injured, holy crap. Does stoic masculinity prevent men talking about being raped by women? So the best that we can say at this point in time, the most honest thing that we can say, if we are refusing to say that it's most likely equal, is that we do not know. We don't know the situation. And we won't know until we get activists out of the statistical gathering, where they do things like redefine women raping men as made to penetrate. Oh, he just had conflicted consent there.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. He felt ambivalent about his sexual
ambivalent
desires.
consent. A man who's experiencing Mary Koss, originator of the 1 in 4 rape myth about women. We can't consider a man who has ambivalent consent to a woman as having been raped. And that includes men who are raped at knife point or gunpoint by a woman. Yeah, I think that at that point, she considers it still ambivalent consent.
Yeah, and because he had an erection, it means that equals consent. But she also she consulted for the CDC and on their definitions, and she developed the definition of, this separate category called made to penetrate, because she was concerned that men who had been raped by women were accidentally being captured in the rape numbers.
And this is like, when you look at it, the most predominant thing that feminists have done is to minimize the situation for men constantly. And it's not noble. It's not a noble urge. This man probably doesn't even care about women. If he did, he'd want to acknowledge the situation, all the data, so that you could solve the problem. He just wants to maintain his identity as invulnerable, at least relative to women. And that's what this is all the fuck about. Men and women wanting to maintain their identities that aren't functional anymore in the face of like glaring truths and evidence, and even keeping our society from imploding. They want to maintain their identities. And you know what? This is what kills a civilization. We develop an identity that works, and it works really well, and it builds a great, comfortable existence. And then it stops working, either because of some technological change or some social change. And we still attach to it. We attach to it so hard that we would rather lose everything we've built up than just question what it is to be a man or what it is to be a woman. What we're seeing here with this man is a failure of the ability to introspect on what it actually means to be a man. So he continues to use his platform to promote something that is unscientifically sound, that has been refuted and rebutted multiple times, and he refuses to engage with the data that would actually solve these ills for both male and female victims. All right, go ahead, Karen.
One of the things too that I've come across in the last year or two is that when I go on these bunch of conservative talk radio shows, right? And I have these hosts who say, what the hell is men's rights all about? And how did you get into it? And what makes you want to do this? Right. And I talk about divorce court and family court and the erosion of due process in pretty much every area of the criminal law where women come into conflict with men. So domestic violence and sexual assault and those things. Right. And our willingness to do that, to erode due process, essentially repeal the Magna Carta, as Dr. Zimmerman said at ICMI 2017, right? So what I get from these conservative radio show hosts is, thank you for doing what you do. Us men need your back, or need you at our back, right? And so you literally have a situation where the men who are most likely to embody what is considered to be traditional masculinity are the ones most willing to accept that they are vulnerable to inequities and injustices within the system, and in particular, injustices perpetrated by women. They are the most willing to look at that like head on and say, yeah, it's never happened to me yet, but it could, right? And then where would I be, right? And it's these progressive men, right? These feminist men who are unwilling to, who reject traditional masculinity, right?
Supposedly.
Who are, well, according to them, who are saying, yes, we don't and we won't accept any kind of suggestion that men may be as vulnerable as or vulnerable than women are in any arena of life, right? We're not willing to accept that. So you literally have the people who are decrying toxic masculinity embracing it, and you have these conservatives who they would call probably fascists and Nazis, right? And definitely toxically masculine. I mean, these are men who are like, why aren't men all like John Wayne anymore, right? A lot of them are like that, right? But I just I talk about the reality of the situation as it is, and they're like, you know what? You're right. You're right. We are vulnerable to these particular things. There is a situation where we are being treated unfairly, right? Systemically, right? There is a situation where we could use the help of women to have our backs, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, like, where am I fucking living? Because the conservatives are supposed to be the ones who are like, oh, little lady, don't let it concern you. I'm perfectly invulnerable, right? And it's the progressives who are supposed to be, oh, yes, you're right. Men can be victims too.
And it isn't. You got these guys.
It's the opposite.
Well, let me explain.
I don't even fucking, like, where am I fucking living?
I know, and people say, well, why do you talk to conservatives so much? Well, because they're the only ones who are listening. And okay, and I appreciate the liberals and the classical liberals and the more left leaning people who contribute on our channel, but you guys don't have a platform.
Yeah, and
there's a reason why, because these lunatics have taken over your platform.
I'm also willing to admit that traditional conservatism is not necessarily, the bee's knees for men, right? It's not all freaking drinking mead, putting your feet up and twirling your mustaches and smoking cigars for men in the land of traditional conservatism, right? That's not what it is. But these are the only people who are actually willing to look at the situation and say, oh my God, these fucking bitches have too much power. And they are actually capable of really inflicting injustice on men.
Here's the thing. Okay, I think I can explain this. You know how all these tyrannies call themselves like the Democratic People's Republic of Total Freedom and Complete Human Rights? Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
That's the way the progressives, these guys, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They have taken conservative values and they're just doing it harder than any other conservative. Like, this guy is taking the idea that men are invulnerable and women are vulnerable, and he's just pile driving it as hard as he can into the ground. Just as hard as he can, to the point where somehow he's constructed this idea that men are vulnerable to being invulnerable this toxic masculinity where men don't recognize their vulnerabilities because they're invulnerable. Which makes no fucking sense. But anyway, he's pile driving this stuff into the ground because he's basically just like any one of those dictators who calls his country the Democratic Republic of People's Freedom and Total Prosperity and Human Rights, because they're exactly the opposite of what they say they are. This guy is not a progressive. He is somebody who is utterly incapable of looking at the contradictions in his own belief system and his own how he has structured his masculinity. He probably believes that he should be embracing vulnerabilities, but there just are no vulnerabilities to embrace. Men should embrace their vulnerabilities. They just don't have any. Jesus Christ.
This is a typical progressive, though. Like these are his, like this is not different. This is what progressives believe. This is what progressives and leftists and feminists believe.
I know it's exactly what they believe.
Yeah.
But it's not, the word progressive does not apply to it. Just like for the most part, every time you see this whole list of positive adjectives in front of a country's name, they don't apply to it either.
You mean like Democratic Republic of North Korea?
Yeah, that's what I've just been saying for the last 50 minutes. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yes. So they apply this word progressive that doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a shield to what they actually are, which is basically traditional gender roles, except taken to the worst extreme you possibly could. Yes, men should express vulnerabilities because vulnerability is feminine, and men who don't express vulnerability hate women. Well, but they don't have any vulnerabilities. Like, why would men express vulnerability if they have no vulnerabilities that are significant relative to women? He simultaneously wants men to express vulnerability, but acknowledges no vulnerability that is in any way significant relative to women's vulnerabilities. So you express vulnerability, but they're not that important. The fuck? Like I said, progressive. He's the Democratic People's Republic of Feminististan.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Karen had to leave, so
we should
probably. I think we better wrap it up.
Yeah, we better wrap it up. I won't. I could not play anymore. I mean, they were gonna get into false allegations, but you should probably wrap it up, and then maybe we'll do another video on this later.
Yes. Okay. So for everybody, this was a fundraising stream, a Fundzerker, a Rantzerker plus a fundraising stream. We are trying to fundraise to minimize the financial impact of the hosting and underwriting the International Conference on Men's Issues 2019 on Honey Badger Radio. The conference will be in Chicago, 16th, 17th, 18th. If you are able to get to it, please do purchase your tickets. Make sure you get there. We need bums on seats. It's really critical, guys. So that's like really important to represent. You can go to Feed the Badger to help out with the sponsorship or a ticket. So do that now, please. And that's basically it for me. You want to run the ad and then take us out?
Well,
since we've lost a Karen,
we did lose a Karen, but I did get a bunch of super chats. I think I should probably read them. Don't you think? I think we should. So
yes, we should read the super chats.
So I'm going to go ahead and open up the super chats. They've been coming through the show the whole time, so some of them may be out of context, but I'm going to read them anyway. So Brendan Rex gave us $2 Canadian and put a bunch of kitty faces in. Thank you, Brendan. Mr. Roboto gives us $5 and says, as this will be a long sausage, I will say, who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Zeranx gives us $5 and says, I was planning on going to Chicago for my personal vacay, but since Brian said it's no good, ... Yeah, well, I mean, it is good. It is good. I just wouldn't think that if somebody was going to use other people's money to go on a personal vacation and just take advantage of people, I don't think Chicago would be the first place on the list. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, cops have quotas, sadly. It counts when crimes happen. Egregious Charles gives us $5 and says, when a wart refused to respond to over-the-counter treatments because it was too deep, I burned it out with a nail, a propane torch, and an ice cube. That sounds pretty badass. Polaris589 gives us $2 and says, what is the null hypothesis? That was a question, Allison. Do you want to answer it real quick, or?
Okay, sorry, I've been dealing because apparently the password reset function for Feed the Badger doesn't work, which means I have to figure out how to deal with that again. The null hypothesis is in science, you're supposed to attempt to disprove your hypothesis. So if you have a hypothesis that society privileges men over women, so society wants to protect men and provide them with stuff that it does not want women to get, it doesn't, or wants to take from women to give to men, then you actually have to attempt to falsify it. And this has never happened. As far as I can tell, I've done a lot of literature review of feminist science. They have never actually attempted to falsify their hypothesis.
Yeah.
And that means it's not proven. In fact, it's not real science at all. And in fact, there's some points in time where they have inadvertently proven the null hypothesis because they have said, okay, there's pure patriarchy conjecture. It would predict this outcome. And invariably when they do that, the outcome is not what they predicted. Often it's the exact opposite of what they predicted. So patriarchy conjecture has been proven to have no predictive power, and it has never been subject to the null hypothesis. So feminists have never actually gone and attempted to disprove their own assertion, which is, like I said, it's essential to rigorous science to do so.
Mhm.
So it's just bullshit. I mean, the fact that we still have to contend with it is astounding because it is
absolutely.
literal bullshit. Okay.
That's the power of feels. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, the shelter mentioned by BuzzFeed had an actor included in the video. He plays the former junkie turned friend of Jessica Jones in the Netflix show. Oh, I know the guy you're talking about. Zeranx gives another $5 and says, Alison, what's the name of the longitudinal study where men who do assault were assaulted by adult women as children? Do you know the name of the study?
Well, it's not all men. It was one of the biggest risk factors. Just give me a second.
I can read the next one. It's not really a question, it's just a statement while you're looking that up. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, knowing better's entire video is all about women being victims of everything on earth. He's perpetuating fear into women in order to fulfill his motive. Yeah, his motive is to basically defend the status quo, which is the feminist narrative, because he feels really comfortable there.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, the feminist narrative reflects a general narrative. Feminists just take it like really far. They're sort of Moonies when it comes to this narrative, but most people buy into it. They feel in their feels that women have to be weaker than men, that women have to be more vulnerable than men. No, they don't want to take it as far as talking about toxic masculinity or male privilege or patriarchy or rape culture, but they feel it in their feels that women have to be in a situation where they're weaker than men. And it's just, that's the freaking truth. So, in a lot of ways, feminists take this to an extreme, but it's there. It is there in all people.
Yes.
And in some ways, we are responsible for the feminist extreme because, let's be frank, they allow the average person, like I was just talking to just rando guy who was like a web developer. And I would tell him about all this stuff. And at the end, he said, but women have it worse, right? We need feminism, or he needs feminism in order to maintain his own identity as a man. So we are all complicit in constructing this mess. And the only way to get out of it is actually to do the work of challenging it in ourselves and resolving it in ourselves and getting rid of that need. Otherwise, we're just going to be manufacturing. If we got rid of all feminists today, every single one of them, we would have manufactured them again within 10 years.
Oh yeah. No, it's like it just warms the cockles of our hearts to want to care about women and want men to be put into the service of women.
And we want to justify it. And the way we justify it is through feminist theory. Okay, so my cats are bugging the hell out of me. Sex differences. Actually, it is development of sexually abusive behavior in sexually victimized males, a longitudinal study. Now, some feminists have criticized that and said that these males were abusing younger people during this longitudinal study, but they were also younger. So the males who developed the sexually abusive behavior almost exclusively were abusing minors, but they were minors as well.
Ah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's been a criticism by feminists that this doesn't relate to men growing up to be rapists of adult women, but it's pretty strongly evocative of
Yeah, no,
the
and
connection.
there is some research that suggests that something like 65% of men who rape women have a history of sexual abuse by women during childhood or adolescence.
Yeah, so there's more
Like
evidence
these are
of this.
men convicted of rape.
Mm-hmm.
There's more evidence of this as well in that. So there's a strong suggestion that this is a big problem. And if we ever want to actually reduce the number of women raped, we need to address the number of boys raped.
All right. I got one more super chat and then we'll go ahead and get out then. Yeah?
Well, I do want to make it clear too, right?
Mhm.
Because other studies done in the late 80s and early 90s on men convicted of rape, where they gave them a guarantee of confidentiality, they found that these men, most of them were convicted of having raped one woman, but when they were asked, they disclosed that they had one of the studies found an average of 8, and the other found an average of 11 undisclosed or undetected rapes, right, that these men were responsible for. So this is not the vampire myth, right, that every single boy who is sexually abused grows up to be an abuser, a sexual abuser, either of children or of women, right? It is there are some people who can come out of that, whether that's because of their genetic and personality predispositions, or whether it's because they actually got help, or both, right? But there are some people who come out of that and don't actually continue the cycle. But it only takes one person to victimize several people, right? And that's really one of the things that we need to point out and need to reiterate over and over again when we talk about this stuff, right? The rapists the men who rape women are not all the boys who have been sexually abused in their lifetime.
Okay, get this.
Yeah.
I can give you a number. It's 10%.
Yeah.
10% of sexually abused boys, 10% will go on to sexually abuse others. That's how much sexual abuse is repulsive to the average man or boy. Only 10%.
Only 10% go on to repeat the pattern.
Yeah, only 10% go on to repeat the
90%
pattern.
don't.
And 90% don't. And this is like, it is important to point that out. Because not only is it, refuting the vampire myth that a boy who's sexually abused will necessarily go on to sexually abuse others, it also indicates how gentle and compassionate the average man grows up to be. Because it takes...
He wouldn't do that to somebody else.
They wouldn't do that. The natural state of a young man who is sexually abused, is to not repeat it. And that is credit to their, I don't know, it's credit to their good nature. And to be told that men could so easily be taught to rape as by, hearing a rape joke is disgusting.
Oh God.
It's absolutely, it's a slander and a slur on the nail. Most boys and men don't even become rapists after having been raped. Are you fucking kidding me? A rape joke. Shove that crap where the sun don't shine. I guess that's a rape joke.
Wait, I'll do that. I'll shove it up where the sun don't shine, and I'll even do it against your consent. Ha 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 ha. I made a rape joke.
Yeah, well, we could be talking about putting it into their brain.
Well, you can do that, Karen. You're a woman, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's not rape when you do it, Karen.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Sexual assault
can
at
you
worst.
believe it? Only 10% of boys who are sexually abused go on to abuse anyone. 90% don't. And feminists have the bloody goddamn audacity to say that men will frickin' rape based on hearing a rape joke?
Yeah.
Or even locker room talk, like, oh, they'll grab him by the pussy. Are you freaking kidding me? That's an unbelievable slur.
Oh yeah.
I wish there was a court of law where we could take feminists to court for their defamation or slander.
Yeah,
That should be done.
I kind of do too.
All right.
All right.
All right.
So
We gotta go.
last super chat. X-Man gave us $5. Says his YouTube name is ironic because he doesn't seem to know much. Thank you, X-Man. All right. So with that said, I think Alison has said everything that she wants to say in terms of, like, you know, to send off info. And thank you guys for your support. And please continue to support us. If we do an extension and, like, you know, a stretch goal, then we'll do another video. We'll continue to respond to this guy's video because it's got so much gold in it. So with that said, I guess we're going to get out of here. So I would like for you guys, please, to hit that like button for us. Also, give this a sub. I did see that we did get a couple new subscriptions. Thank you, Maxime Gerard Simmons, for subscribing to the channel for one. So yeah, please give us a sub and hit the bell for notifications so you know when our shows go live. And leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about this show and all of the discussions that it created. That was not really related to the original video, but, you know, was made for interesting conversation anyway. So with that said, I want to thank Alison and Karen for coming on. I want to thank you guys for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Bye.